He winds, fires, swing and a miss. Strike three. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. 2-2 here to Steinmeier as count gets back to even and ball sets. The pitch. And he sits him down with a slider for strike three. Strikeout number 7 for Nile ball. Here through 4 2/3 innings pitched.
Trey Rogers.
And welcome back, Bandits fans. This is the Bandits Hideout, episode number 3. And this is one I've been sort of looking forward to. We're talking with former Bandits pitcher as well as current professional pitcher for the Gary SouthShore Railcats in the American Association of Independent Baseball, a very well-respected professional baseball league. You know him as Mr. No-Hitter. It's Nile Ball on the line. Nile, thank you very much for joining me today, and welcome to the Hideout, man.
Thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
All right, now, well, today I kind of just want to pick your brain and just kind of go down the steps of your career. So without further ado, let's just start from the beginning. You know, tell us how you got your start into baseball, and were there any inspirations or big leaguers that you modeled your game after towards the beginning of your career?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would say that pretty much growing up, it was almost really put in my hands that I was just going to be a baseball player. You know, from the very time I could really remember I was holding a banana bat in my hand and a plastic ball, and it was just always nonstop baseball for me. So it was kind of like just one of those things. And, you know, my whole career, people have always said, oh, you know, your last name is Ball. Like, how could you possibly not play baseball or something like that? So I always thought it was true in a lot of ways that, you know, I was probably destined for this. But, I mean, I started from probably the age of 3 as a position player, and I was a position player for, I would say, 90% of my whole career.
Wow.
And then, and then in high school, I was a center fielder, and believe it or not, I had actually committed to a D2 school in South Carolina called Limestone College, and Limestone was where I was, you know, going to sign to be a center fielder.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, my high school coach is like, "Hey, you know, I've been getting some calls from some schools, and they're saying they would really like you to be they really want you to be a pitcher." So at that point, I'm like, you know, maybe being a pitcher is the route that could possibly be the thing that gets me over the hump, you know, because I really always thought that position of being a center fielder is going to be what I did, and
Right.
I really had no other second thoughts. But I would say that, you know, my high school coach, Coach Burgess and Coach Bailey, you know, they were essential in, you know, helping me pinpoint what, you know, I will be successful in for the future. So I can definitely thank them for that, and, you know, so helpful. And once that happened and I became a full-time pitcher, you know, Walter State came calling along, and I had never even heard of junior college at the time, which was the crazy thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, what is a junior college, you know, all that. So a lot of doubts crept into my mind, but, you know, afterwards I was very, very thankful to, you know, Coach Shelton and Coach Gerger at Walter State, who pretty much helped me develop. Oh, yeah, of course, Coach Robinson, who was my pitching coach there, and he, you know, they were essential in my development as a pitcher, because you can say you want to be a pitcher, but, you know, there's just so much that comes with it that you're not prepared for
sure.
Especially as a position player beforehand. So it's just essential, you know, that you have someone there who knows what they're doing, who can really help you develop. And that was exactly what Coach Gerger, Coach Robinson, and Coach Shelton did for me.
Yeah, and like you were talking about, down in Decatur, Georgia is your hometown, and you were prepped in high school at Whitfield Academy, like under Coach Bailey you were talking about. And even doing a little research, you know, you had like a 460-something batting average, so that's impressive enough. But
I really was expecting to be an outfielder. I swear, like it was crazy how this ended up working out for me.
Yeah, but then you obviously turned it up at Walter State Community College, and that then led you to Missouri, down in the SEC. You know, 1 year for the Tigers in a closing role, and you looked very impressive. You know, you tallied a 2-1 record, a 3.52 ERA. You led the team with 6 saves as well as 33 strikeouts and about 38 innings of work. You know, I just want to know what was it kind of like pitching in the SEC competition wise, because you more than held your own.
Right. You know, going into it, I would say at Walter State, it was just a big deal, a really, really big deal to go, you know, D1, especially SEC or ACC. You know, that's the goal. And so a lot of us were really competing with each other on the team at Walters. You know, hey, where are you going to go? Hey, where are you going to go? And so when Missouri had came to me initially, I had 0 SEC offers prior to this. And I had, you know, really doubted myself in the world of being an SEC pitcher. You know, I'm really trying to figure out if this is really going to happen for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, my GPA was so at Walter State. So, you know, Mizzou was like, hey, we're trusting that you're going to get your grades up, you know, to where you can come to the school and play for our team. And I was telling them, like, you know, that's my goal and that's what I want to do. So, you know, I signed right there on the dotted line on my first official visit to Missouri. Just immediately was like, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Coach Beezer, I felt like had a really, really good team and, you know, really good approach and everything to the game. And plus they were getting a new pitching coach, Coach Carroll, who I can, you know, dedicate a lot of my success to as a pitching coach just because he brought so much that I had no idea about pitching and just the mental side of the game that, you know, there's no way you could ever, you know, repay somebody for that kind of information.
Yeah.
So, you know, playing, you know, being at Mizzou was just almost overwhelming from being at Walter State. You know, you go from not even having a training room to, you know, my first week I had a bruised hand and I was able to get my bruised hand back in like 2 weeks just from the rehab I did with our trainer.
That's insane.
So it was incredible. Yeah, it was incredible just to see like the different levels of treatment you get just because, you know, you're at that next level. And it was something that inspired me to be better as a pitcher. And I felt like the competition level was, you know, no better than junior college in my mind. That's what I tried to tell myself. Like, hey, you know, these are the same guys who are going D1 just like you. Okay, so there's no need to be scared, no need to be worried about, you know, who I'm going to face this week or next week. It was just, I'm going to go out there every single time and give it everything I had.
And then you also were pretty much a headache to opposing batters, holding them to just around a batting average, on average, 219. And you also didn't allow a run through your first 6 appearances. So that's just very impressive off the bat. But you had a fantastic senior year as the ace of the Braves at North Carolina Pembroke, posting team high 8-4 record, striking out 82 batters. And now this had to be your first full seasons as a starter on the mound. You know, talk about even adjusting your game further to the starting role from your perspective, because it looked like you were very consistent throughout.
Right. So with Pembroke, it was funny because when I first was getting recruited there, I was, you know, pretty much looking everywhere at that time, D2 wise, and people wanted me to be a starter. You know, they were saying like, hey, you're a pretty big talent coming from an SBC school. We need somebody who's going to come in and be a weekend arm for us, you know, and sustain, you know, a little bit of energy.
Yeah.
So I had to already make up my mind that, hey, like the possibility of starting is going to be there. I've started before, not extensively, but I had done it in summer ball prior. So I was just like, you know, it's really going to just be like how, you know, however I handle it is how I handle it. So when I got to Pembroke, you know, they're obviously like, hey, you're going to be a weekend guy for us. This is just the reality of it. So, you know, get your mind right, get your conditioning up. And they had a great conditioning program at Pembroke, I would say for sure, that allowed me to sustain, you know, my stamina for over, you know, multiple innings. I believe I threw well over 100 pitches every single outing.
Mm-hmm.
So out of those 12 starts, I was well over 100 pitches every single start. So, you know, you look at those numbers, you do the math, and it's just an insane number of pitches that I threw that year, you know, in comparison to what I did at Mizzou. But like I said, you know, the training and everything that we had done in the fall in preparation for my senior season was crucial, and it was so impactful. And so that really allowed me to show that, hey, I can also be a starter, you know, like, you know, scouts look at me, I can not only close, but I can start. So I felt like that was, you know, going to be something that, you know, was you know, kind of stuck out to scouts in a way that, hey, he's also, you know, got both things going for him. But, you know, sometimes that, you know, scouts just look for very, very specific certain things. And, you know, maybe I didn't meet that criteria, but it's, you know, I felt felt like something that I was proud of myself, that I could, boom, one year go out there, lead a team in saves, and then boom, the next year I went out for, one of the best teams in the country at the time, and was able to, lead the team in wins, and so I felt like I was very proud of that.
And you should be. And you had a very impressive pitching repertoire, a fastball that could reach up to the mid 90s, and off speed that would really fool a lot of batters. And your slider was just a fantastic strikeout pitch. But your work in college would even further propel your career further, but not after a quick stop in North Iowa, first as the ace of our squad for a couple of weeks, the Bancroft Bandits. First things first, I just want to know, how did you get recruited by Mike to kind of talk you into heading up to North Iowa, because you've been kind of down southeast your whole life?
Right. So it was incredible. As you know probably very well, Mike's an incredible recruiter. And Jake right there alongside of him, it was just kind of like it just was such a gel that once I got there, I was in, no doubt that this is where I needed to be. But beforehand, it was funny. The draft had just ended. I'm sitting at home training still, wondering, what's going to happen? Am I done with baseball right now? Like, is this it? And so I get a DM from him on Instagram. He's pretty much telling me, like, hey, there's this league up here in the Midwest that's, starting to get really popping right now. And, we're looking for an arm. And at that time, no one had contacted me about anything. So I was like, why not just go out with a bang, and finish out my career? And the one thing he kept just pounding was just, hey, we're going to win a championship. So if you want to win a championship before you go out and possibly, sign pro, come with us. So, I told, and that's where, I felt like, he was calling me, he was leading me. And it was just incredible how it all happened because, I get out there on the flight. I met Nico right there at the airport, didn't even know who he was. And we sat there in that whole ride all the way back to Bancroft, just talking and, going on and on, seeing if he knew some of the same people. But it was an amazing experience because that pretty much had summed up the whole summer and how it went. That, as soon as you meet the people at Bancroft, you just automatically feel the love and you feel the support and you feel their love for baseball, which is why you're there, You're there to play baseball, and there's, a group of people who love baseball and they love watching their guys play and they love their guys to win. So, they got the right coach at the helm right now, for victories.
Yeah, and that had to be another big adjustment in your career, just going out to Iowa where obviously, that's kind of out of the norm to you, a town of 700 people. But as you were going on about, right. It's a baseball town, and they welcome all these players with open arms from all over the country. Like, this isn't exactly right. One where you expect it's going to be a bunch of Iowa and Midwestern kids. This is top tier talent, and
right.
and you were on a championship team now, but you didn't last long for us, but for the right reasons. And I want to point out a couple of games where you really shined and really showed your worth. And in the home opener, you had one of the most unforgettable moments in team and league history. You chucked out 13 strikeouts in a no-hitter 2-0 victory over the Albert Lea Lakers in last season's home opener. Was that the first no-hitter you pitched?
See, that's a good question because I asked my dad about that, and I was like, have I thrown a no-hitter before? Because that's the first one I can remember. And he said, dads remember weird facts like that. He's like, yeah, you threw one when you were like 9 years old in this one travel league. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. So nothing that I obviously remember in recent memory. So,
yeah,
that for me was one of the most incredible experiences that I've ever been a part of, especially considering that, I had taken the lead for the Bancroft and, I was really unsure about a lot of things and how it would work out for me. And then lo and behold, the very first outing, of the summer, I throw a no-hitter and I'm just like in shock about it. And, I could really I was honestly speechless right afterwards because I was just like, who would have thought that I would come out here and do something like that? In front of these people who many of them have never seen a no-hitter. And that to me was what meant more to me, is that so many kids and umpires and, dads and moms were walking up to me and just saying like, thank you so much for that because my son or I had never seen a no-hitter in my entire life. Yeah. And you'll probably give me the only no-hitter that I've ever seen. And, that is incredibly touching. here. You know, you hear something like that, and you're just like, you know, whoa, like I've seen plenty of no-hitters in my life because, you know, I watch TV and baseball all the time, you know, and some of these kids just may never see that happen because, you know, the competition level is high out there. And, you know, there's really, really good hitting in the Midwest. And that's one thing that they'll always have, and that's really good hitters. So no-hitters are just, you know, very much so a rarity. And so for me to be able to give that to the people of Bancroft and I would say go down in PCBL history is just something that's unforgettable, you know. I mean, I can't even write words for it. It's like a movie script, honestly.
Yeah, and it's definitely that much more special when you get to see it in person. So obviously, a lot of those people had to just be in awe as it was happening too. And that kind of leads me to the next question. It was a quick game. You know, it was a pitcher's duel. Albert Lea starter. Bloom was pitching really well. The sun was still up by the time the game finished, but you seem to just have such a big presence on the mound. Like I talked about earlier, you mix up the pitches very well. You attack the Laker hitters. I just want to know your mindset going through that game. Because if I can recall, like maybe a comment there some a long time ago, I think you said it was like about the seventh inning. You like kind of thought to yourself, I don't think I've given up a hit yet.
Right. Yeah, I did say that. It was weird because, you know, obviously no-hitter games, you don't want to do anything to jinx it. And in baseball, it just seems like it's probably the most reoccurring thing is, you know, possibly jinxing yourself in a moment like that. So that's what I didn't want to happen. So obviously I'm looking at the scoreboard after the seventh, and I'm like, man, this is crazy, you know, but don't think about it. Don't think about it. Just get, you know, to the next inning, get to the next inning, you know, get to the next batter and do what you have to do to, you know, get your team a victory. Because at the time, the game was still very close. You know, it's only a 2-0 game at that point. So in my mind, I'm like, you know, if anything, I just got to stop them from scoring, you know, much less keeping them off base or keeping them from getting a hit. To me, that was the more important thing, was just making sure that 2-0 victory was secured. And in a lot of ways, the mentality is the exact same, you know, even with a game like Carroll, where we faced them probably, a week or so later, where, you know, I also had a duel with their guy. And, you know, that was just an insane game because he was matching me pitch for pitch. And so in a situation like that, your mentality has to remain, you know, I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about what the other guy's doing. I just got to go out there and take care of what I have to do. And so in a situation like that, you know, you have to just completely isolate yourself on the mound, isolate yourself in that moment and say, you know, right now all I can possibly think about is just getting the next guy out and throwing, you know, the next strike in that very moment. You can't think about the big picture. Usually that moment will just get too big, and then, you know, the baseball guys will ruin it. Base hit up the middle or a chopper, you know, off your foot or something like that, and it's an infield hit. So that, or, you know, in the situation almost where I had, you know, and I have to throw the ball away, and, you know, and force an error so, you know, the no-hitter stays alive. But in that moment, I was thinking about the no-hitter. I was like, yeah, I got to keep this alive. So I just, you know, slung the baseball and just pray that they gave me an error, and they did. So I was able to get the next guy out and finish it off.
Well, the thing now, if that throw was on the mark, that would have been a freaking crazy finish to that game, like, because the throw would have beaten the guy, but you know, you had to slide down all in one motion and just sling it. But if that was on the money, that I would have gone nuts up in the booth.
And that's so crazy, is because there was a play like that actually happened in Mizzou to beat Vanderbilt in this 2-out-of-3 series, and I actually made that play. You know, a little chopper right to the left of the pitcher's mound, or to the right of the pitcher's mound. It's, you know, very tough play. You're going against your body. And I just picked it up and I flung it to first. In that game, I hit the first base on the money. And in that game, I was like, nah, we going to throw this one away, see how that goes. You know, maybe they'll give me an air. If they don't, oh well. You know, it was a great effort. But, you know, they hit me with that air. So I appreciate the scores in that moment right there.
And as you were just briefly mentioning, Nile, you were the star of another one of my personal favorite games from 2019. Like you mentioned, a 1-0 win over the Carroll Merchants. And again, another perfect definition of a pitcher's duel. It was you versus Tyler Jacobson. And it was coming off after a big upset the week before to Carroll at our home field at Memorial Park. But on the road in complete innings, this time you struck out 15 hitters and only giving up 2 hits this time in a shutout victory in another game that you just flat out dominated. Do you by chance remember your mentality during this game? Because this one, it was a different environment on the road, and Carroll, they're a loud and rowdy crowd.
Yeah, I would say that game was, if not as special as a no-hitter, it was really, really close, because that game, was at that big old stadium that Carroll has, and it's a lot of people, and their crowd is super loud and super deep. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, this is like some, Division I stuff that I used to be a part of. This is like it makes you feel like, all right, it's time to actually like show out a little bit. So in that one moment, I was just like, hey man, this is just, the best thing that I could possibly think of in that outcome. I was just thrilled to be a part of that game, because Tyler threw an incredible game, and so I was just like honestly blessed to be able to do it with him like that. And he did it so soundly, and he really had a team who was just an incredible hitting team at bay. He held us at bay for the whole game until we were able to scratch off just a couple of runs and that victory. It was just it was an incredible game to watch.
Yeah, and it's I'm sure it's always fun too. I was when I played under Mike at Albert Lea, it was always one of my favorite places to play, just because, like you mentioned, it kind of has that D1 feel. Always a great turnout, a great support system. It's just like it's very similar to Bancroft's community. It's just kind of in a different way. But again, like you mentioned, Tyler Jacobson, I think that's another name that's going to go pro very well. But
I believe so too.
You were one of 6 Bandits to coin the term hashtag PCBL to pro last year, and both of those games quickly led to the next step in your career in the American Association of Independent Professional Baseball, very well-respected pro baseball league, and you first signed actually with the Sioux City Explorers. Can you kind of tell us about your time spent in Sioux City?
Yeah, I mean, the time in Sioux City was great. I met a lot of guys who were former big leaguers. I met, guys who were former minor leaguers, and it was just really incredible how it happened. But it was just like, those guys were able to just help me, and I would say push me to become a better pitcher, because I didn't know too much about pitching like I thought I did, because obviously, you go through college and you see everything and you're like, I know plenty. But I just really did not know as much as I thought I did. And so when you're in an environment like that, that really opens up your eyes.
All right. And you then went to Gary, Indiana, where you're currently signed with the Gary SouthShore Railcats. Now kind of tell us about your experience as a Railcat pitcher.
Yeah, so with the Railcats, it was just like crazy how it happened. But I essentially was in Sioux City, and they brought a guy back from the DL, and so I got released. And coach, manager, Steve Montgomery, the manager, was like, "Hey, you're a really great talent. We're bringing a guy back in who's been on our roster for all season. So right now this is a situation where we just kind of have to release you, and we can find you a different spot." So he had given me a card with a list of other coaches' names and everything to possibly help me out. But once that happened, it was just like, he was like, "Hey man, Gary still needs arms, and they could possibly use you." He was like, "I would go over there and talk to the manager if I were you, and see what they could possibly do for you." And in that moment, you're like, "What?" Like, that never happened.
Yeah.
So I ended up going over there and speaking to the coach, and I was like, "Hey man, Skip, can I possibly throw a bullpen for you guys?" And I talked to Alan Keanu, the pitching coach, and he was speaking to me. He was like, "Hey, we don't do this very often. This is a very, very rare occurrence, but we're willing to see what you have, because we know who you are. We know you're a very good pitcher. We know you're very talented, and we love working and developing young guys." And they knew I was a young guy, so they were like, "This really could be a perfect opportunity for you." And I was actually relieving in Sioux City, so I went from relieving to starting, back to relieving. And then Gary was like, "Hey, we want to possibly make you a starter again, because we believe, that's where you're best at." And so Gary then remakes me a starter after I throw a bullpen for him. They're like, "We'll sign you." So I ended up going to Milwaukee with them, and they were essentially like, hey, we're going to keep you on in Milwaukee, but, if we feel like, we're going to move in a different direction, then, we're going to be able to get you, a ticket to the O'Hare Airport, and that's it. So it was just like, either you ball or you don't. And in that moment, you just have to reality check yourself and say, man, this is what I was born to do. This is what I'm destined to do. And so I was able to go out there in Milwaukee. I threw well. And when we got back home, they made me a starter, and I ended up finishing the year off very, very strong with a great ERA. I wouldn't say a great ERA, but a very good ERA, especially compared to what I had in Sioux City. And so I was able to finish off on a really strong note, a few good quality starts, and just very thankful to, Coach Tiano and, Greg Taggart, the manager, and Gary for, the opportunity, because it really saved my career and, allowed me to continue.
Yeah, well, found a way to persevere, and that's kind of cool how Sioux City had your back, just kind of giving you leads to other teams of the league. All right, Nile, your next season of pro baseball is coming up soon. Can you kind of tell us what you're looking forward to, and if you still have any of those high hopes for the upcoming season, or any goals for this spring in Gary?
Yeah, so I've been training all off season, just been throwing, getting in good shape. I've been trying to lose a little bit of weight because I felt like I might have been a little bit heavier last year, and I wanted to slim down and get a little bit more muscle on me. So that's really been my off-season regimen. But I would say that looking forward to this year, I want to, dominate this league, and I want to show affiliate scouts that I still have what it takes to, play in, an affiliate league or play for an affiliate team, and the MILB. And I feel like that, with enough perseverance and with enough willpower, that can happen. I feel like that, you're never down and out, because we just had a guy from our team, Colin Willis, who just got signed as a 28-year-old, and he's been grinding for 5 years, 6 years, with the same team, and has balled out and finally got his opportunity with the Red Sox organization. So you see something like that happen, and you really feel like, maybe you're never down and out. So to me, that was like really, really good to see that, he stuck with it, and he was able to succeed from, all of his hard work. And I felt like that if I just applied that same pressure and that hard work to myself, that, I could possibly make that happen. So, it's really just all about an opportunity. It's all about, just working hard, and, just hoping God opens that door for you. If not, it's fine. There's other things out there that I'm very capable of pursuing. And, I know that I'm well-rounded enough to be successful in other areas. But, I would definitely love to continue my career in baseball, and try to show young guys and other young players that, a success story is possible, even through many, many trials and tribulations.
Well, now you're about 22 years old, going on 23. You just re-signed with Gary SouthShore in the American Association. So I got high hopes for you, and especially high hopes that your best days of pitching are ahead of you. I want to thank you again for joining the Bandits Hideout. But before I let you go, do you have any advice for any possible players tuning in? Like, what would you tell them to try to kind of further their careers, to take that next step?
Yeah, man. Pretty much like what I just, was speaking on, but working very hard, never giving up, knowing the right people. Obviously don't get involved with the wrong crowd. It's very easy to get caught up in, a bad lifestyle, especially as an athlete. It's all around you. Everybody just wants you to have a good time, party, have fun, but it is possible and doable to have a social life, but, a sound social life, something that is, under control, where, you're not out of, all over the place, all, at crazy times at night and stuff like that, just handling your business on and off the field. I would say that's the most important thing. Scouts look at that, they see a guy's makeup and they wonder, hey, is he going to fit in our program? And if they don't feel like it, they're not going to pick you. So sometimes you have to show them that on and off the field, you are capable of, performing and stepping up to the plate. No pun intended.
Very good. And this was episode number 3 of the Bandits Hideout, featuring professional baseball pitcher Mr. Nile Ball, who was, even though it was only for a short time, still a Bancroft Bandits legend. Nile, thank you very much for joining the podcast.
Man, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
All right, we'll have more episodes coming up out very shortly of current as well as past Bandit players. Once again, this is Mitchell Kieran, the play-by-play as well as overall media guy for Bancroft. Thank you for joining us on the Bandits Hideout. As always, go Bandits.